Sari Braithwaite, your documentary Censored looks at footage cut out by Australian censors. What was the initial purpose, or what was the kernel of inspiration to do this project?
I think that the answer to that question has to be curiosity. I came across the collection when I was researching a short film that I ended up making about a particular censorship issue. And then in that process, I uncovered this huge archive, and I just wanted to know what it was. And I really didn't know what I was making when I started it. I just had this ambition to watch the whole collection and figure out what I thought about it.
All right, so how long did you subject yourself to this graphic footage, and what do you think it did to you psychologically?
It's such a good question and such an interesting one now that the project is finished. I'm very happy that it's finished, and it took me a really long time to do it, partly because the archives wasn't open every day, and so I would have to turn up with a VHS machine to watch the collection, which was how they made it available to the public, and I would do that a couple of days a week for about a year. It took me to watch it. And then once I watched it all, I just had absolutely no idea what I was meant to do with it. And I was kind of shocked by how much this project that I thought was going to be a whole heap of fun and kind of silly and irreverent actually turned into something which I was despairing over and I didn't really know what to do with. So there was like a year of watching, and then there was about a year of procrastinating, and then eventually my producers, kicked me into gear and told me I had to make something and finish it, and that's what this final film ended up being.
So you kind of break it down into segments of things that are censored, and one thing that kind of shook me at first was the violence against women, and it's very scary at first, but then it gets kind of boring and cliched. And I think, cinematic history would be a lot richer if we had, different perspectives. And I was just wondering, as a female documentarian, what were kind of some uphill battles you could share with us that you face simply because of your gender?
I think it's one of those things that when I walked into this collection, I was relatively naive about what I thought I was watching. As a filmmaker and as a creator, you walk into a collection like this and you think, that censorship is bad, that it curtails creative freedom, and as an artist we must, rage against it. And then I watched this collection, and it was so defined by male perspectives and male visions of who women are and what women are, and that really shook me, and it left me with this really difficult question that I thought that I was liberating this archive, but what do I do with an archive which essentially kind of degrades and objectifies me as a woman? And it's something that I really wrestled with in making this film. And I think one of the things that I learned from it, and that I take away from a project like this, is that how important it is to be exposed to different ways of seeing and being in the world, and that exactly what you said, that the more perspectives we have, the richer our art is, and the better and more discerning our eyes audiences are.
Yeah, I completely agree. What do you think? So, since censorship is kind of like your forte now, what do you think of the deplatforming on like YouTube and other platforms of controversial political figures?
That's a question that I feel like I can't answer with
Fair
much
enough.
authority, but I definitely have been kind of watching it with such interest. And I think, one of the things when I started this project on film censorship, one of the ways that people were kind of more dismissive of the project, or thought it was less interesting, was because they said things along the lines of, well, we don't have censorship like that anymore, we have the internet. And then since making this project, it's really come to light how much of what we're seeing is being shaped by the platforms that run the internet. And that I think that that's a point that I really took away from this project, is that when I began it, I thought that censorship was something that you were either for or against. And I think that now I really do believe that censorship just is. It exists in so many different ways through different powers. And in my case, it was about the government and it was about filmmakers and the audience. And now it's much more complex when you bring in the world of internet and the platforms and the corporations, that there is always someone shaping what we view and what we don't view. And that's something as people living in democracies and not living in democracies need to be acutely aware of all the time.
I'm curious, which documentaries really influence your style?
That's a good question. I think that there are a number of films. I really love the work of Bill Morrison as a filmmaker who works with archive, and he has such an affection and nostalgia for cinema and the moving image, which I also share. But this film kind of took more of a sinister turn in terms of it wasn't an archive that I cherished. It was kind of an archive that I raged against. But then also someone like Agnes Varda sits deep in my heart. And I remember watching her films and when at a point when I didn't know whether I was going to have a voice in the film, that I was so reluctant to do it. And then to see the confidence of her voice and her ability to bring a different type of voiceover to her work, that really inspired me too. So I think those two filmmakers definitely had a big part to play in a film like this.
So would you say before you started the documentary, your stance was basically, censorship is bad, and now you would say you have a nuanced take?
I think that my personal view has been complicated, and I think that I would have gone in with a very clear sense of what I thought about censorship, that it was bad. And then now I kind of feel like if someone asked me that question, I take a deep breath and say, I don't really know the answer. And I'm very good at arguing either side of the debate. And I think that is definitely what I wanted to instill in an audience, that I didn't want to dictate a point of view, but I wanted to complicate something that I think people generally don't think enough about. And I was delighted by the idea of people having fights and debates about something like the issue of censorship, because I really do think it's so important to who we are as viewers, in a historical context, but right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a contemporary issue, but when is it never, ever not an issue, censorship? And I'm always interested in this subject matter. But anyways, I want to thank you so much for your time. And I hope people check out this documentary, which plays at the Mayfair Theater coming up pretty soon. And may you tell me, before you leave, what you have coming up in the next year and beyond?
I've just started a new documentary that I'm currently on location now shooting, so that's really exciting. But it's a slow burn project because I've just had a baby, so I'm trying to figure out life as a filmmaker and as a new mother, and it's exciting and exhausting. But I think that it will ultimately influence the kind of films I want to make.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.